Welcome to Triple Threat, the podcast with Jamel President, where it's good news and good vibes all the time, baby.
When we left Portugal to come play with you in your system, Jamel, it was the best thing for Shane because you pushed him to do other things outside his box.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month. Hey, what's up, everyone? We are excited to bring you season 2 of the Triple Threat podcast. In our first episode, we have Mike Hostilo. That's Hostilo. Mike is a former student athlete turned successful businessman in the area of law. We had an interesting conversation about athletics, the past, present, and the future. I find it exciting to share stories of former student athletes that have transitioned into business. Coming up next is Mike Hostilo. Let's get into the interview. Yeah, how you doing?
I'm wonderful.
Good. I ain't gonna take up too much of your time. I know you're busy.
No, I just got to pick up my daughter at 3. I'm good.
For sure. All right. Well, we get started. First, I want to say thanks for coming on and being a part of Triple Threat. This will be our first podcast of the upcoming year. So
hopefully not our last.
No, not the last. Definitely not.
No, sir.
Definitely not. But I want to kind of just go into our conversation what we had earlier, when we first met, talking about sports.
Yes, sir.
The whole thing about our podcast is we try to talk to businesses, entrepreneurs, student athletes, just talk about the whole sports things, right? And you're a big sports guy. So
yes, sir.
It's perfect for what we're talking about. So Mike, I know we talked about it earlier, but for the audience, take us back a little bit, your Parks and Rival days, where you grew up, and how was the recreation programs and all the other stuff? Take us back to those things.
Well, I moved to South Carolina when I was in the 7th grade to Beaufort, South Carolina specifically. My dad was a Marine, or still is a Marine. And I started, I grew up in a neighborhood called Laurel Bay, South Carolina. It's a military base, for lack of a better term, and started playing youth sports there, played church league basketball, played Little League baseball, and played, I guess it was Pop Warner football.
Yeah.
And started in the 7th grade there, and that went up through high school.
Good. So what are some of the programs that you played in? Like what caused the interest in sports? Where your dad was someone in the community? Because that's what we all talk to, people about getting that groundwork in their community. The parks was a thing for them. What support you had during that time in your early years of development in sports?
So sports has always been sort of the connection point between my dad and I.
Right.
My dad is from Georgia, and so we were always sports fans. And then obviously we were very proud this year that our Georgia Bulldogs won the college football playoff. And so we got to go to that game and had a very great time at that. So that was always a connection point. And growing up a military brat,
right.
We traveled all over the place, and it was just something we did, in military communities. It was really important for the parents and the kids to be involved in youth sports. So from the time I was 5 playing t-ball to the first time I played in a basketball league to, Pop Warner football at 10, it just was sort of a natural connection, and all the parents, moms and dads, were always involved with our youth sports, and then that would graduate up to high school.
Right, and that's a segue into my next question. And we had a very intense conversation in Panera about high school basketball and about the level of competition in this area. We'll get to that in a second. But
okay,
take me through high school. That young Mike as an 8th grader going into high school. What were your thoughts as an eighth grader? What made your choice in certain school? Was it academic? Was it sports? Take us back from eighth grade year, summer going into ninth grade. Which school in the area?
I went to Battery Creek High School, the Dolphins. That was just a school we were District 2 when I lived in Laurel Bay, and I started playing sports there. I was lucky enough to make the varsity baseball team as a ninth grader and played 4 years of varsity baseball. I played JV basketball, JV football, and it was just something you did to stay out of trouble. Not that I was really getting into trouble. There weren't any mean streets of Laurel Bay or Beaufort, but it was something that all my friends did. And it started from pickup basketball games in my front yard to down the street to playing flag football or, touch football in the street to, yard baseball. So Battery Creek was just a school that I, because of the military families, that's where we were district. And I went to school with a lot of local guys and then played, sports at all three levels up to the varsity level and all three levels, baseball, basketball, and football.
Right. And we talked just about the whole support system. Because you would have loved to get a scholarship playing baseball, right? That would be something that you would love to do. Talk about your thought process, and again, the support system that if you have or didn't have as a high school student. Like where were some of the things that you were missing in order to get to that next level of playing baseball collegiately?
Probably. I will say a couple of things in the negative light. I don't want to take shots at my dad. He's been a perfect dude and my best friend, but I remember we weren't unable to discover that I had bad eyes until I got off into my adulthood and was about to go in the Marine Corps myself. And had I probably had the foresight to go get my eyes checked, I would have probably been a better hitter, but at least we're going to blame it on that. And then I don't know. I mean, one story that we talked about when we met was how a lot of our coaches and our people, our infrastructure, the coaches would take every day. I would ride with, occasionally, or not every day, but ride with the coaches to take guys home. Right. Because Beaufort County was a very rural area. I don't know if I'm answering your question properly.
Yeah. Continue.
And, Beaufort is a very spread out county. And we had kids that if not for our coaches and not for other adults to volunteer to take guys home after school, communities like, Dale, Labico, Gardens Corner, which adjoins abuts Charleston. For sure. They were 20, 30 mile rides to get from Battery Creek High School. And if the adults hadn't taken that initiative to get the guys home, they wouldn't have played.
For sure.
And that was, I remember Coach Stroman and my football coach and Coach Rumble, my basketball coach, that was a big thing that we did that, as a team to get kids involved. And, I have fond memories of that. That was those are long days, but good times.
Right. And sports does that for us. Hey, what's up, guys? In our timeout session today, we got Thaddeus Big Baby Delaney. Let's hear all about it. And you can't help being in the city. It's 7-1 down there.
Oh man,
that's another story. But me being a high senior in high school, and I got to school that day, and it was like, man, we about to watch this Wake Forest and cause a Charleston game. And they about to, I can't go to math my eighth period. I'm like, dude, shit, I'm already on the line of not playing this year. You know what I'm saying? My grades is shot. Y'all talk about cutting down schools so we can watch the game. Okay.
Right.
But we watched the game, man. And listen, I tell you, bro, I was heavily recruited. I didn't have no schools at that time, but I was still heavily recruited. And man, I saw you gave Tim Duncan the business. You know what I'm saying? I mean, at that time, local colleges wasn't on TV like that. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like we had to go, we had to see other colleges, Clemson, USC play on JP Sports and other stations like that. But NCAA, they kind of give us some local love. So when I got there and I saw that, I'm like, man, I'm like, where's the College of Charleston? I'm like, it's right there. Like it wasn't even adapt to me, but man, y'all showed out. Y'all put us on the map. So that led to my decision making. So, as we segue into that part of it, tell us about, some of your experience at the College of Charleston. Like, I mean, we share big wins together, but give me some experiences where, like you're glad you made a decision. Now let's get back to the interview. And we talked about, a lot of my guests talk about the support system and people that they had to help them get through the rec life and the high school life. For the audience, what are some things that you learned being a high school athlete just from, and how do you apply it to your everyday life now? What are some things you learned in high school just from competing with peers, the adversity, things you had to go through different sports? Tell some things that you've learned through high school sports that helped you be successful.
Discipline, structure, challenge, fear, overcoming fear. I remember that in when I was aspiring basketball, for the record, was my favorite of the three sports, but I was probably the least talented, because I was vertically challenged and I didn't have the highest jumping ability or speed, but I loved it the most. Right. And I loved to play. And it was a game that you could play all the time, right? It was, right. You could just get some buddies. You could play with one guy in your front yard, or you could go down to the park and play with a bunch of guys, or you can go to a gym. And one of the things that we used to do was, when I was an aspiring high school basketball player, we would go up to Parris Island, which is the Marine base. For sure. And we were 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, competing against Marines that were 19 to 20, who knows how old they were. Right. And they were bigger, faster, stronger. They were men and we were boys. But I mean, just the life, just the routines that sports set you up into, right? Sure. Right. Doing ball handling drills to jumping rope to shooting free throws. And I mean, when my dad would say, and the biggest fight my parents had was growing up in Laurel Bay, South Carolina, is my dad would always make me during basketball season make 10 free throws in a row in the front yard. And, it wasn't the most sophisticated rim or the best basketball. Right. And there was one particular night, it was cold and it started to rain. And my mom was like, bring my son in here, he needs to eat. And my dad said, no. And, I'd get to 7 and then I'd miss and I'd start back over. Wow. And, if I hadn't have played sports, I don't think that I would have that discipline to carry over into going to college or going to law school. And then, so couple that with a Japanese mother and a Marine father. Right. So they're already got all that, for sure, that discipline and that drive, but then sports on top of which, and then the coaches too. We showed up, and my basketball coach in high school, we came in every day and there was a schedule, right? And it was 9 minutes and you stretch for 9 minutes. And then it was 12 minutes of shooting free throws. It wasn't 15, it was 12, it was 9, not 10, 9. Right. And then you would come into the gym and we would stretch. And if you laughed or you smiled, that was a suicide. Wow. Right. Wow. Or that, if you didn't, that's a suicide. And right. So so we knew that he wasn't messing around. Right. That, it was business and you'd have to show up on time. And I've got so many great stories of playing sports from T-ball to, through high school. And, sports is a huge part of my life and that's what you and I connected on. And that level is when we met, now that we're older and we have the opportunity to influence the younger generation, we want to do that through sports because there's a lot of other ways my life could have gone. Sure. If I wouldn't have gotten involved in sports. And, I'm very thankful for that. And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about sports, right? I mean, the first thing I do in the morning is go to ESPN.com and find out what sports stories are the hot stories, right? And so I can't imagine my life without it.
Right. And I want to piggyback, what you said about that time, because I had a college coach, Coach John Kress. We had to be at
Right.
meetings at 5:13, 5:27.
Right.
You can't be late for those odd times.
Right.
You can be late for 5:30 or 5:45, but at 5:23, you just can't do it.
Right.
Going into, your high school career, I know we talked about, talk to the audience about your attempt to play collegiate baseball. Tell us about that story, your trip to college, and how that looked. What
Well,
happened there?
here's one thing that I think we touched on that, so we'll talk about it again. I was at best probably a Division two player, maybe a low end Division I player, and so my senior year, I was leading the county in hitting, and I got letters at school, and I would get letters at home, and there were a bunch of schools that, quite honestly, I had never heard of. And again, mind you that my mom didn't go to college, my father didn't go to college, so we didn't really have the foundation to understand the landscape of what looking at colleges and going to college was for, right? So I was flattered by, I was getting some letters from some schools to come talk to them. And so we started on this journey where we would travel the Southeast and go to these different little schools, and we went to some Division I schools that weren't very interested. I was more interested in them. But I remember one time we had gone to a school in South Georgia, and I won't name the school, but we were driving back, and my father, who isn't much for words, but when he says something, they're pretty profound, looks over at me and goes, "Son, what in the hell are we doing this for?" And he goes, I said, "I want to play baseball." And he said, "Do you think you're good enough to play in the major leagues?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What in the bleep are we doing this for?" He goes, "Why don't you pick a school that you can get an education at? And then if baseball, try out. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But at least you can fall back on that education."
For sure.
And that was probably a great life lesson that as an uneducated man, an uneducated jarhead, as they call Marines, was one of the great statements he ever gave to me, or great lessons he ever gave to me, because I could have chased the dream. And I know some colleagues or, guys that I competed against or played with that went on and played college baseball. And when that didn't work out, they had nothing to fall back on. Through, if they got injured during school and then the scholarship went away, or academically they didn't qualify, couldn't cut it. And then the next thing you know, they dropped out. And I mean, one of those again, not to digress, but this whole transfer portal thing that's going on with college athletics is very fascinating. So
it is.
But I hope that helps you.
That helps a lot. And I was going to say, with all things have caught up with information to families. That's something we try to really be the soundboard and give information to families on how to do these things. Here's the first step, second step, the third, these things you got to do. So do you think, and not saying things would have been better or worse in your situation, because it's all fate, right? Do you think your execution, if you had a better plan execution of getting to a college, would have been much more beneficial? Because it sounds like not just you, every family, they shoot in the dark. They just find different places of interest, but not really breaking down, the system works for me? Does the coach system works for me? Is the environment works for me? So do you think if you had a better execution, a better plan, would have played collegiately?
I think if I would have, like what's different than what you do, and what the things that we didn't have 30 plus years ago, is we didn't have information available to us, right? We didn't have the internet. We didn't have, again, I had just taken on, I don't even know how these schools, I guess they read the newspaper and saw that I was hitting 476. So they sent me a letter. They never got to see me play, right? Because they're not going to come to Beaufort, South Carolina and watch me play. And then number two, I didn't really have the means or the funds to go to a camp. I went to 2 camps, and we talked about one of them being Citadel. And that was more of a basketball camp for anything. And I wasn't playing college basketball of anything. And so I think today, organizations like yours and kids in general just have so much information at their disposal. And what can happen is, now that they got to research we have to teach these kids that the goal I'll tell a story, and I won't say his name, but there was a kid that was being recruited to play football at the University of Georgia, which is my beloved alma mater. And as much as we wanted him to play at Georgia, both his parents had gone to Georgia, and his father played football at Georgia and was a friend of mine. And when this young man was looking at all the schools, he ended up choosing a school that was academically superior to Georgia. Probably almost as good in football, has a very esteemed football tradition, is in the Midwest and has gold helmets. I'll just leave it at that.
For sure.
And he told us, his dad told me that, he said, "Dad, this is not a 4-year decision. This is a 40-year decision." And this guy is actually on the big board to be drafted the first round this year. So it's going to all work out for this young man.
Sure.
Because his foundation is great, and the resources are there, and he's a 5-star athlete. But 99% of us are not 5-star athletes.
For sure.
And 99% of us aren't going to play at any level be past college.
For sure.
Okay, I wasn't good enough to play in college. You were fortunate to go beyond many steps of that. So I just think the process now needs to be, yes, obviously, if they're going to go play college basketball or some college sport, they want to be able to play. Right. Sure. They want to have a good time. But at the end of the day, they got to get that degree, right? Sure. Because I think the stats are still, don't lie, only like 19% of the folks in the United States of America have a bachelor's degree.
That's crazy.
Right? I think it's still, I don't think it's changed much.
Right.
So, I mean, I think as you and I are passionate about this, passionate about kids, passionate about, evoking change and creating opportunity, is when we get them young, we've got to be able to explain to them that, hey, this is an opportunity. Not only, it's a 40-year decision, not a 4. Right.
The most important message to get across to student athletes suffering from mental health issues is that you're not alone. Many student athletes deal with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other mental health struggles. If this is the case, speak to someone like a counselor, a parent, a trusted adult, or your fellow teammate. Adults who are supporting a student athlete should be aware of the signs. A student athlete who is experiencing mental health difficulties might have constant fatigue, loss of appetite, mood swings, apathy, or even declining grades and/or social isolation. A student athlete's mental health can be severely affected by an injury. An athlete's entire life becomes about their sport. And when they lose the ability to play, it can take a huge toll mentally. As we continue to reduce the stigma around mental health, hopefully more middle and high school level student athletes will feel confident discussing their health, whether it be mental or physical. The Triple Threat podcast will be adding a psychology aspect in season 2. We will be doing our part to help destigmatize mental health when it comes to student athletes. So subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform so you never miss an episode. Now let's get back to the interview. And I want to go into my other question about, because we talked about it briefly. What are what's your input and suggestions when it comes to recruiting out of the South Carolina area versus the Georgia area? Because we talked about it's a big drop when it comes to developing athletes here, South Carolina versus the North Carolina or Georgia. And I would say it's the pioneers, it's the supporting cast that came back and put a lot of things in the earth in those cities, in those states. But we do agree there's not the same here in South Carolina. And
you mean in basketball or football?
I would say in basketball. I would say in football, I think is pretty good. I think we're top in football. But I think in basketball, there's a little letdown when it comes to recruitment out of the state.
I mean, but Jamel, I think you would be more,
Well, I'm talking about, because I know you talk about the other program in Georgia that you help out a lot, that does a lot with helping high school kids or something like that get to college. They support them and whatnot.
yeah.
Do you think more programs like that need to be in South Carolina per se?
100%. I mean, I think it starts, when they're in the ninth grade and being able to, and again, it's, we're probably alienating the non-athletes, and we're probably alienating the people that don't play the big three sports. And I don't even consider baseball the big two, basically, basketball and football. And I don't know if that it just puzzles me that there's 5.5 million people in the state of South Carolina. And you and I were jokingly at the Panera Bread, not jokingly, but critically looking on the internet and saying there's only X number of players from, and we talk about Charleston County, which you're based out of, in the Charleston metropolitan area, that just continues to explode. I don't understand why we can't, here in the South Carolina Low Country, be able to get more looks, for lack of a better term. Say what?
Yeah, produce more kids.
Yeah, because there's enough bodies, right? And there's enough people playing ball.
Right.
And there appears to be, I don't have that answer. So I'm sorry to be evasive or go all over the place. It would start, it starts with, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
And that's a good answer, and a subject that needs to be talked about more. And that's the reason why we ask these questions. But we'll come back to that. Our next topic that's really huge in sports right now is mental health. Athletes that's really coming out now saying they need to talk to somebody. And before, it was looked down on because it wasn't considered tough. How do you feel about this new this elephant in the room with mental health and athletes? What do you feel about that? How do you feel about that?
It's a whole nother level of empathy that I have to, that me as a middle-aged man and the Asian Marine background, it's been something that I've really, really had to do some more, get more in depth to educate myself,
right?
Because it obviously is a real thing. And then COVID obviously has caused lots of problems for a lot of younger kids, younger folks with mental health and being isolated, not being able to play their sport. So yeah, it's real. It's absolutely real. And we had that incident with the young lady in the Summer Olympics with gymnastics.
Right.
And so you and I were raised in a background raised in an era where everything wasn't sensationalized by social media. Sure. Everything wasn't sensationalized by, it was for good and bad, right?
Right.
And now these young people are constantly being able to be monitored and being constantly observed and critiqued.
Right.
So the level of criticism is higher than it's ever been. The level of accolades is higher than it's ever been, but the level of criticism is as high as it's ever been. So it's a real thing, and it's something that, as people trying to get kids to the next level, we have to be aware of.
For sure. Mike, when we first met, when I first saw you in Tanger.
Walking down this, yeah.
And when I saw you, I ran up on you. I almost knocked you over. I was like, Mike Hostilo, because it was so, media and marketing is huge, right? And I want to, again, always give you big ups that, my favorite one is about you were in the shower or something and the phone rung and you reach your hand out of the shower and say, Mike Hostilo, just showing people,
you're not bothering me.
Showing people that you're always available, right? You're accessible. You're there when you need them. And people look at that and compare that to other lawyers, other situations that maybe take a long time to respond or being evasive. Your marketing tactic is that I'm always available, and I'm always there. So I want to say this, and I don't want you to get me in trouble, but I want to say I'm going to use this one right quickly.
Okay, I hear you.
This is Triple Threat Podcast with your male president. Let's have a conversation, right? I like that, right? So
Yeah, we're having a conversation.
check this
Be
out.
careful now. Dr. King's watching you.
I got you. Check this out.
Be careful.
So in 1977, ads for commercial speech began because it was outlawed before that, right? They called it, I guess, commercial speech, Bates versus State Bar of Arizona. So my question to you is, because your media market is so powerful, how effective was that to you thus far, being that lawyers can advertise on TV now? Before they weren't.
Hey, what's up, guys? In our timeout session today, we got Marcus, the Glove Woods. Let's hear all about it.
It's going, and this is how I feel. Unless you come up with something that says every single person gets the same amount, or if you stagger it somehow, like you just said, 25,000, 50,000, you know, because the punter or a kid that just barely got, you know, got the scholarship, his likeness is not as valuable as the next person's likeness.
That's
right? So you're still going to create inequities in itself,
But what
right?
good point. But what if that goes to the hardest worker? What
That's
if
how life is. Yeah,
that's how life is? But I
correct.
was unaware of that cost of attendance stipend that you talked about. That changes the
Absolutely.
game on things, right?
It absolutely changes the game.
But what if there is a standard blanket cost of attendance for all athletes, 10,000, whatever it is. But if I'm a business major, if I'm a marketing major, and I play ball, I can't be limited to just that. If I got the means and smarts to go out and to get more,
Correct.
that's what it's all about. Now, would that affect my playing performance? Because now I'm focusing on this platform, the eat off. So I know what you mean. It gets so choppy and so crazy. It's
And you can bring in, and you end up, do you invite at that point, if I can go out and make money on my own, if they're going to allow me to work a job, do you invite the big time boosters into this situation and say, all right, here's a job, we'll take care of it. So I do think, you know, there's something they have to do with that. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. We're looking at basketball.
Now let's get back to the interview.
Well, again, that comes back to, you know, a lot of people don't know how to get in touch with a lawyer.
For sure.
Right. And again, now that we have Google and now that we have, you know, all these mediums to get in touch, to gain access and get in touch with people. But back in that era, if you didn't know a lawyer, you either had to look on a phone book,
right,
and then call. And then one thing that brought me into this business, you know, I went to law school because I couldn't be a Marine, and I was a history major, and I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? I'm going to go. And I went to night law school because my dad wasn't convinced I wanted to be a lawyer, so I paid for it myself. But lawyers, you know, if you didn't come, because I didn't come from that class.
right,
I didn't know how to get in touch with a lawyer. I didn't know any lawyers.
right.
So what it allowed people to do is, again, it goes back to giving kids access to information. It gave you access to information.
For sure.
And still I'm off, you know, people laugh at us or frown at us or make fun of us because I'm the guy jumping around on TV. But you know what? If not for that, I wouldn't get to help all those
Exactly.
35,000 plus people I've gotten to help in almost 30 years.
Exactly.
So it's given access to people that are just like me. Because at the end of the day, as fancy as I may become in this world, I'm still going to be that kid from Laurel Bay,
For sure.
shooting free throws, trying to make 10 in a row in his front yard.
For sure.
Right. Right.
sure.
And my dad yelling at me. So I just, you know, so I don't know if that answered your question,
To
Jamel.
answer my question, a lot. My last question about that topic is that if Bates, you know, didn't, you know, went to the Supreme Court and fight for that law, if it was still in place, how would you then be creative in reaching your audience?
I'd figure it out, but I don't have off the cuff. I don't know the answer.
Right,
I mean, I would definitely have figured it out, but it was an opportunity. You I'm still as comfortable as I am, going back and forth with you about sports and meeting you up in Panera Bread or running to you in the street. Being a lawyer is still awkward for me. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but
That's
it's still awkward for me, right? Because it's just not. It's fighting for people's not awkward. Talking to anybody's not awkward, but just law in itself is not. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Interesting.
Yeah, and it just talking to this nevertheless and furthermore and irrespective and all those words they taught us in law school just don't make any sense. And then I remember my parents having a legal transaction when I was a kid. And we went to the lawyer's office, and this was when we first moved to Beaufort, and it involved a house. And the lawyer just talked to us in a way that I thought, oh my God, this guy, he's not even a human being. And I don't want to talk badly about lawyers, but I will. You're going to give me the chance. But I just, what we try to do, Jamel, is again, break it down just like you and I broke it down, right?
Sure.
I'm a man, you're a man, we're people. Let's connect each other. Let's find some common ground. If I can help you, you can help me, great. Because that's what we're here to do. So we want to do, from a legal services standpoint, we want to make it as simple as possible, make this traumatic event as easy as possible, and deliver it with a smile. My pleasure, awesome. Right? Like they say at Chick-fil-A.
For sure. And we talked in our conversation about, I don't know, it just seems like it's a sense of connection with the community. You know what I mean? Your commercials, the way you talk, and the way your poise is. And the question is why? Why is such a community involvement and entanglement with your soul, with your space per se? You know what I mean? Like what?
Because that's who my parents are, man.
For sure.
Yeah, that's who we are. That's who we are, right? I'm just a guy that always taught to look at everybody as important, right? Everybody's important. Everybody's a person. Everybody laughs. Everybody cries. Everybody feels. And what? Just because I'm Mike Hostilo and I spent all this money on TV and advertising, that doesn't make me any better than I was Mike Hostilo in Laurel Bay who couldn't make 10 free throws. I mean, I'm the same dude, right? That I was when I was 12. Right. So I'm never going to forget that. My dad would smack me if I ever became anything better than that. Right. And it's just who I am. I've seen my parents give back and be kind and extend regardless of the person's race, sex, origin, whatever. We're just who we are, right? For sure. We are who we are. We're just all people here trying to fight this thing called life and do it the best we can. Right.
And now it's just a question, just because, it's genuine, it's reality. And, I think that draws people to you as not just for business wise, just for relationships and personal wise, because you're down to earth and, you talk and you give your expertise, and most lawyers are immediately, arm's length off and not really as receptive. So that's the reason why I wanted the audience to hear that response.
I appreciate that. I mean, but being disingenuous, that's a fancy lawyer word, or being not being myself is exhausting, right? So I'm not smart enough to being genuine is easy, because if you're fake, you just get tired, and ultimately it's going to catch up to you. That's right. I mean, I came from a working class background. I worked for everything I got or I have, and I've gotten a lot of blessings and a lot of people that have given me opportunities. Like we started this conversation with coaches that took their time to help me with little things, big things, whatever. And I mean, we talked about this too, I think, is the two biggest influences in my life are two coaches that I've never even met, but on my wall in my office, I have a Vince Lombardi, the great Packer coach, about winning isn't everything. And then John Wooden, the great basketball coach, who I view as the greatest teacher and greatest basketball coach of all time, the Pyramids of Success. And the Pyramids of Success don't talk anything about basketball. I mean, when he says, what does he say? Rush, but don't be in a hurry, right? That doesn't have anything to do with basketball, but it does. For sure. And you talk about like the generally regarded as greatest coach of this generation is Nick Saban. Right. And whenever you watch him speak, you're not talking to somebody that's a football coach. You're talking to somebody that's a leader of men.
For sure.
right?
For sure.
And that's what I want to become. I mean, I envy those guys. And even though I have my small opportunity to give back and my small opportunity to influence, I'm going to do the best I can. I mean, because that's
awesome.
You and I together.
For sure.
He made a name for himself as a star for the College of Charleston basketball teams in the mid to late 90s. And now, Jermel President is doing what he can to make sure that the Charleston area kids have a chance to succeed on the court and in life.
So I want to, give some of that back to the community as well. After college and after playing professionally, I started the Day Foundation just to be that wealth of knowledge to the kids in the community and parents as well.
College of Charleston Hall of Famer Jermel President said he saw a need for this while he was in school. So he founded the nonprofit Day Foundation. And its philosophy for success is based on what he calls his oatmeal recipe.
Let's go and finish together.
Basically teaches the game of basketball, focusing on skills, development, nutrition, and education. Not only SAT, ACT type stuff, but education for parents in how to navigate through the different levels of athletics.
In closing, Mike, we got something called the oatmeal recipe, which we designed that goes along, again, with basketball, but again, with life too. And there's 3 ingredients. Skill development, education, and nutrition. So I want to give each one of those and give you a time to just respond on each one of them. And we can start with skill development. Here's, skill development is identifying, your clients, identifying your staff, identifying what's right and what's wrong, and making a decision on them. That happens every day. You have to be skilled, be a great lawyer. How important is skill development to you and what you do for a living?
So the greatest thing that I think the hardest thing that we do in our business is I think when you go to law school, they sell you this bag of goods that you're going to wear a suit every day and you're going to be a corporate lawyer and be dealing with sophisticated transactions and people of high intellect and big business deals. Well, no, that's untrue. So 99% of us that are going to go to law school are going to sit across from a table from an average dude like my dad or an average dude like me who's been in some situation that needs help.
For sure.
And one thing that they don't teach in law school is communication. Okay, how to talk to people. Now, talking for me has never been hard. so I've never been, I've always had the gift for gab. Sure. So our biggest struggle in our development of our kids that work with me in our office, is communication. And you take these wonderfully talented kids that can read a lot of books and tell you about the cases in this book and the law in this book, or how the sophistication of the laws work and statutes and all this, but they seem to have a difficulty communicating on a basic level with people. So that's no different than the guy that can jump high and run fast, but he can't handle the ball, or he can't shoot, or he can't,
For sure.
I mean, I'm going to die. The most obvious example, I'm going to go on a tangent here, is there's the kid that plays, Josh Allen, that plays for the Bills.
Yep.
The quarterback for the Bills. So when he came up from Wyoming, he had all the raw skills, right? He was 6'3" and he was 240 pounds and he ran fast and he had a strong arm, but he lacked the minutiae, as they call it, the ball skills. And he got coached up and now he's great. Right? And I look at basketball's the same way, right? The fundamentals, right? The fundamentals are football, blocking and tackling, basketball, ball handling, defense, free throw shooting, right? Learning how to play, there's just so many little things but the greatest struggle that we have from our business standpoint is teaching people how to communicate.
Awesome. A second one is education, about education, about laws, and your line of work is all about education. Things change daily. How important is education to you, and how do you apply it to your craft?
So again, back to our kids in our law firm. I went to the University of Georgia. I was a 2 point nothing student, and I went to a night law school. Not one time in 29 years, this is my 30th year, has anybody asked me where I went to school, what kind of grades I made? Okay, not one time. One time. They always ask me, can you help me? Can you solve my problem?
Right.
Okay. I think the education of life, just learning how to, emotional intelligence is a big thing. Right. So again, you can have the smartest guy, smartest lady, greatest credentials, greatest grades, men's 200 IQ. But if they don't have emotional intelligence and be able to handle themselves in crisis and adversity, one, and then be able to step in that other person's shoes and have empathy and understanding, then you're not very effective.
That's awesome.
That makes sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Last one is nutrition. And we know how important nutrition is, especially with athletes, even with, somebody that's, doing some in corporate America. What I hate is seeing someone, and not judging, but I'm just saying, seeing someone, in a Mercedes Benz or a Range Rover, and they pull up in the Burger King parking lot. Like, I don't know, that's just kind of weird to me, because you put all that money into your car, but putting less money into your body.
And put all that garbage in your body?
That helped you get that car. So how important is nutrition to you?
So you take, I again, as we're the whole purpose of this conversation today is to let's have a conversation, is about to teach these young people that what they put in their body is very, very, very important. And I'm not, because I will go through a fast food restaurant and get a drive-through when I got a hankering for, quarter pounder with cheese or a Chick-fil-A sandwich. I mean, so I'm guilty, but I will say that for 3 months, I became a vegan as a bet. I did feel pretty awesome for those 3 months.
For sure.
And, you have a lot of famous athletes, from Cam Newton to, I think LeBron's a vegan.
Yeah.
If I made a mistake.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of these famous athletes have gone the route of nutrition. Tom Brady is probably the most famous example of somebody that has taken diet and exercise and longevity to almost a
new height,
incomprehensible height, right? But it shows in his performance. I mean, he's 44 years old and he just quit and he was on top of his game. So I just think we know, again, everything goes back to information and the power of that information. We know now more than we did when you and I were kids.
For sure.
So the ability to be able to have access to information and find out that information and the benefits of eating right versus not eating right, and how your muscles don't repair, and how, all those things. So yeah, I don't always practice what I preach, but I'd like to eat healthy when I can.
For sure. Well, Mike, that'll do us for today. I think there was great information in what you give us from, when you first start coming up, your middle school, high school, collegiate, now professional career. Just want to thank you for coming on. And it's not a commercial, but if you want to, just what do you got to say to the viewers? Any last thing you want to say to the viewers?
No, this is not about my law firm, Mike Hostilo.
No, not at all. No, not
this
at all.
This is about the only thing I want people to know is that it, the young lady that helped me set up this podcast today said, you are so involved in other things other than law. Awesome. I don't want being a successful lawyer to define who I am. Right. That's not who I am. Right. What I want to do is I just got an email, Jamel, the other day of a young man that went to Battery Creek High School, my alma mater, that we had a sneaker drive for them because we wanted them to all wear the same kind of Nikes, right?
For sure.
And we had a sneaker drive, and that was about 5 years ago. He is now an aspiring junior at Claflin University.
That's awesome. And
he wants to go to law school.
That's awesome.
So he sent me an email, and we're going to talk about him coming to intern our office.
That's awesome.
So that's the message I want to send is opportunity. My great father says there's no such thing as luck. Opportunity is luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
For sure.
So you're going to get looks in life, and there's great people like you that are willing to take chances on young people. Make sure you take advantage of that young person,
sure.
that opportunity, because it is not. There's some luck, But most of it is when you know some opportunities looking you in the eye, take it.
Right.
And there's a lot of great people like you out there helping kids, and we'll do our own bit of good.
For sure.
We'll change the low country.
For sure. Well, the thing is, when you're always ready, you never got to get ready, right?
There you go.
That's the main thing. And that message,
There you go.
the message you just stated is just exactly what we was looking for.
Okay. Well, God bless you. Stay safe. I'll hit you up when I'm back up there.
For sure. I appreciate your time. Yes,
I wore a hoodie just like you today.
There you go.
All right, man.
I got you, big guy.
All right. Stay safe.
You too. Thank you again.
All right, man. Bye-bye.
All right, Mike.
Bye.
So there it goes, guys. Another one in the books. We want to thank Mike for being a guest and sharing his wealth of knowledge with our audience. Just think, there are a lot of students out there that have similar situations. They just don't know where to go and don't know how to get there. It's almost like having a first-class ticket and a tank full of gas, but no direction to the airport. We at Day, we have the GPS. Don't forget to subscribe to the Triple Threat Podcast on your favorite listening platform. We are live on Apple, Google, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. That's Triple Threat spelled 3 R-I-P-L-E 3 H-R-E-A-T Triple Threat Podcast. We'll be right back.
What Jermel is doing with the Day Foundation and the approach he's taking to help develop young athletes, first of all, getting them prepared from the academic standpoint, which, as you know as well as I do, Bobby, that's the most important element, to try to get them to eat healthy, to be able to train properly, to get the proper education, and then hopefully for those who are talented enough to have a chance to move on to perhaps even get a free education by going off to college. But I love what Jermel is doing. It's a wonderful program. Hopefully more people in the community will get behind it, and some of the businesses involved as well to help sponsor this program, because these are the kind of things that every community needs, looking out for the best interest of the youth. The future of this country is in our youth, and everything that we can do to help prepare them better for that is absolutely wonderful. And I can't express adequately enough my admiration and respect for what Jermel is doing, and hopefully he'll get a lot of help from a lot of people.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President, and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month.